going to just talk a little bit more on a subject I covered in a recent video. I made a video about Operation MOLTO. By the way, sorry about the lighting and everything, and if I look like I'm perspiring, it's very hot here. So Operation MOLTO, this was begun in 2019. It was a sting operation to take down a network of people using a cloud-based platform to share child abuse images, pornography, child pornography. Now, what do you guys think about this? How do you feel about this? Do you think, oh, this doesn't mean anything, or do you think this is a win? So when you think about what's going on in the world, what people talk about, what you think you know about child trafficking, sex trafficking, facts, figures, who's committing what to whom, when and where, what do you feel about it? What's your understanding of it? I think a lot of people will hear about Operation MOLTO or, Operation Rescue, which came before it. I mean, there is one of these operations carried out, they're happening all the time throughout the world, and they come to fruition every few years, 2007, 2011, etc. And they usually end up with, 100 people with, the 1,200 charges, and these people end up in jail and children are saved. Do you think, well, that's nothing, because all these elites, and all these missing babies, all these politicians, all these Satanists, what is happening with regards to bringing down them? What is happening? So this is just a tiny little drop in the bucket, the tip of the iceberg, and it's not getting the real cruel, nasty people. And, there are hundreds of thousands of children, millions around the world, that are in this sort of servitude right now, and they need to be saved. And what are people doing about it? You might be tempted to think, well, this is just like capturing those individual dealers of tinnies or cut ounces of pot that, hang out at high schools and things like that, right? And you're not getting the growers or the big distributors. Okay, well, why do you believe this? How do these crimes really occur against children? And is it any different for elites than it is for, scumbuckets in general suburbia? Right? What does a network mean? What is the difference between network and organised crime, right? So, because there is a thing called outrage porn, and unfortunately in the true crime arena, outrage porn is rampant, but it's also rampant to people in communities that are just trying to, raise children, and maybe on Facebook, on Facebook, every fifth mother is reposting things from, Operation Underground Railroad, and they're having bake sales to raise funds to send them, and that type of thing. And they are wearing t-shirts with 800,000 missing on them. What are they being activated in the right way? Are they trying to save children the right way, hashtag save our children? Or are they part of this outrage porn? And does this take away from what people can really be doing in their own community and actually be making a difference, you know? Or are they caught up in what's going on the bird app, the clock app, here on the tubes, you know, the Polish films that are made, the documentaries that have the blurred faces and the distorted voices, you know, these fake international councils set up as tribunals where people go and give their testimonies about satanic ritual. None of it, to talk up against these things, you know, Wainwright, Pederasts Pizzagate, National Rape Day, the targeting children. To talk up against these things isn't to deny Satanism. It's not to deny ritualistic abuse of children in all sorts of ways. It's not to deny that children don't go missing. It's not to deny that children aren't, you know, are trafficked. But let's talk about it. So a network is, you know, what these networks are that are being brought down. These are often sort of, most networks, they're kind of loose networks, okay? They're people loosely connected. There's been a decline since the 80s, at least in Australia and in America. Maybe it hit a little bit later in places like the Netherlands, but there's been a decline in these organised groups of pedophiles, right? So support groups, and normally they are more orbiting around pederasts rather than heterosexual abusers. So there'll be groups, you know, support groups for pederasts, and, you know, they give each other support, you know, moral support. They talk about seduction techniques, you know, grooming techniques, how, where and what to put themselves in the way of victims. So, you know, you often will find the pederasts will be the people that are in the church youth group running activities for young people. They might be in the Scouts Club. They might be a teacher. This is a lot of the reason why male teachers are being put off going into the teaching profession, because there is a stigma around it and they come under such scrutiny, some of it very cruel, and yet we know that women abuse the women that the people that they teach as well. And that is probably on the rise now statistically, purely because there's less men in the teaching profession. And these pederasts, they have these networks or loose networks. Maybe they join these organizations like, you know, the North American Man Boy Love Association. They have magazines. They communicate through bulletin boards. And, you know, they do share images, but often they share just written materials because that's difficult to prosecute, right? More difficult. So actually, when it comes to child pornography, a lot of it is written pornography. And people have pen pals and they share all this information, and they do share images that way as well. And these associations are working to, they want to change the law. They say that they are working for, you know, for children's rights. They want to lower the age of consent, right? And they spend a lot of their time trying to do that because they think everything else is what's warped and not what's in their own minds, right? And if they're not connecting through magazine ads that are coded in such a way so that they know what they're talking about, then they might be connecting when they're already in prison for such crimes, and often they have to be grouped together because they have to be put away from general pop, right? So, but they're a network, and people that might make money, I mean, I guess there will be a few people that make money equivalent to drug running money, but mostly it's not a lot of money. They are just sharing their sick proclivities, and it's a loose network, and it's not an organised crime situation as such, right? Which takes, to be, earmarked as such, or to, qualify as being that, these are planet organisations that have planned modus operandi, to extort money, to receive monies, to they sort of have to involve violence or other threats, and they involve fronts, so trading fronts, so money laundering basically, or whatever, right? So legitimate fronts that are actually other types of businesses. For example, how we know that people who want their resources, children, they might set up childcare centres and things like that. What is it that Jamal West does again? Anyway. So is it just that the organised crime isn't being, investigated and everything because it's run by the elites and they are protected, so that's why Pizzagate happens, but the pederasts aren't investigated and put in prison, and the operations just keep on going. And look, they're doing it in plain sight. We've got the Wainwright situation, which was a furniture company that they did two things. Number one, they were selling furniture that was expensive, and people that don't understand the value of certain things, at least the market value, didn't understand how a cabinet could be $10,000, and all these cabinets were named. The names came from computer-generated program. They were all named after girls' names, right? So people got the idea, number one, because of a misprint of some other prices of things that they were selling, maybe the different finishes or the accessories to these cabinets, I don't know, and it made it sound really expensive, on top of the fact that these cabinets were selling for $10,000 each. So that's it. The rumor goes around. This is the QAnon type thing of, type rumor where, sorry, I'm really fidgety and fiddly, eh? I'm just sort of recovering from a migraine, and sorry, I'll just try and be settling. I know it's so annoying playing with my hair. I should really just tie it back. I've always done it. It's a type of sort of, anyway, I need something to play with, don't I? Hold on. Right, so yeah, so the show my belly, the Wainwright situation, right? So that's what that was about. So they were trafficking children, by the thousands probably. This is what people are thinking. Why aren't anyone doing about it? And these elites get away with everything, right? But how does abuse really happen? Now, of course, in some areas, people are lured into trafficking or just taken into trafficking, threatened into trafficking. into prostitution, that sort of thing, right? And it does happen a lot into a certain type of person. And trafficking can happen a lot to youths that are vulnerable, right? LGBTQ youths who might be already out prostituting on the street. They don't have anywhere to go that's family. Their family becomes a community on the street, and they are easily manipulated, coerced, etc., forced into different types of situations. But what mostly is happening? Well, when police do these busts, a lot of the pornography, it's been made by the individual pedophile or, predator in their own home with children that are at their disposal easily. Their own children, people from their youth club, etc. And it's homemade. It's not professionally shot porn. It's homemade video or still images, and this is what's shared. And who are predating mostly on the children? Well, yeah, their own family, their stepfathers, their teachers, etc. And it's these small cells that are committing crimes. And maybe, the pederast is someone that will have generally the most victims, and it could be hundreds, but, sometimes it's, the people that are predators. They are, they're just committing these crimes against the people readily available to them, okay? And the elites are the same. The elites are finding people that are readily available to them. I mean, Jeffrey Epstein, scumbag. What's elite about these people, right? But people would say that he's part of this elite big sex trafficking ring. Well, what was he doing? Well, rather than organised crime, he's doing what a lot of people do, what a lot of the pederasts end up doing, schoolmasters at private schools and things, creating an organised victims group. What Jeffrey Epstein did was get people that were vulnerable young people, that were maybe girls that were in trouble already or having problems at school or home, running wild or just a bit lost or just looking for adventure or easily manipulated, just wanting to earn some money. And that's who he got, right? For the most part. Just the same way other predators find people, these vulnerable youth, okay? And he's the same. And if he'd had children, maybe he would have abused his own children. And people that have $1 billion, if they're going to be an abuser, who are they abusing? Their own children. And people that are vulnerable. People that they know they can buy for money or coerce because of their power, the maid's daughter, etc., right? People that are around them and in their periphery. And who are they sharing with? Well, they might have these loose networks, but we are told, whether we believe it or not, I don't know, okay, it's your prerogative, but we are told that this is how it works. And yes, there are organised crime gangs that do this. And I think, we all know the horror stories of women kept in houses. I mean, it happens here in Sydney and Brisbane, wherever. Women brought over, they're told they have to pay off their fare and their passports are kept, right? And they have to work in the brothel until they've paid off a lot of money, right? This goes on all around the world. But let's talk about sex trafficking, child trafficking in terms of the numbers that we're told about missing children, right? Because, from the 80s especially, think John Walsh, he is, his child Adam was decapitated by his murderers, by his abductor. And, you know, John Walsh, I think it was in 83, saying, America is strewn with the raped and mutilated bodies of our murdered children. And then, you know, you add that to the numbers, quotes like that, and people like that, saying things like that, and you add that in your mind to these numbers. 800,000 children missing, you'll see on someone's t-shirt on Facebook, Save the Children. And you picture, okay, what does this mean? What does trafficking mean? Does it mean these children that would be disappearing from the community? Oh, those are the ones. What does this 800,000 figure mean? Well, less than 1% of those are actually missing still. Now, one child missing is too many. One child harmed, one child killed, okay? Don't start that bullshit. That's not what I'm saying when I talk these numbers. 106 missing children were on billions of milk cartons, for example. It gives a different impression, and you add that to what John Walsh says, you know, right? And so out of the 800,000 now, it's not to say that some of these children, when they are away from whatever home they've been reported from, haven't been hurt or abused. That's not true, and particularly if it's teenagers that are runaways. But what statistics are involved in this number? And I made a video about this, about Orrin and Orson West, because of course there were concerns about trafficking for them. I at one point thought maybe they've been rehomed, hoping that would be actually the case, because I thought, you know, it's horrible what the possibilities are. But, you know, it was an Aussie lady making up videos about, she was manipulating the statistics because her belief was that they had been stolen out of their backyard, that they had been trafficked. Look at these trafficking numbers. When I broke it down, the ones that out of the 1,000 and something that she swore were missing from Cal City trafficked, there were 4. 2 of them were Orrin and Orson missing. 2 others, their bodies were actually already found years before. And those were the statistics, the real statistics. Because what happens is, yes, one person out of a broken up couple might kidnap the children. Children might run away. They might be held too long by relatives who don't want to return them. They could just be missing, and then they're found over the fence playing with the neighbour's dog, or, you know, they were hiding in the cupboard. You know, this is all the reported children that, you know, they get this missing statement. Many of them are found immediately. Many of them might be runaway children which do come back or are found a week later. Now, yes, this statistic worries me. Teenagers running away. Running from what? They are probably trying to run. They can just be running. It can be normal teenage truancy and things like that. But they can also be trying to escape abuse, sexual abuse, etc. Right? So I think, you know, we need to remember there's other data involved. But I'm just talking about when you are throwing yourselves behind movements and getting caught up in outrage porn. Do you know what you're talking about? This is why in my operation, sorry, I've been yelling again and everything. Sorry I talk this way. That's why, but it's just because of my migraine and everything. It's, if I talk quietly, my voice is going to keep cracking. So I'm trying to project clearly. In my Operation MOLTO video, I wanted to highlight what we can all do in our community, because the missing and trafficked aren't this galaxy of invisible children that, okay, so if they've being trafficked, and if they're being damaged, they're just gone. Where are they? Let's hunt them down, hunt down these elite groups, hunt down these organised criminals. And you can, it's like not seeing the forest for the trees. And so we may be forgetting that actually what we can do is save our children in our very communities, the ones that live next door in our own homes, go to our schools, go to our churches, come into our businesses. Okay, so we need to know what we're looking out for truly, because trafficking happens in the home, abuse happens in the home, or to children that are meeting with their abusers in their immediate environment. The randomness is much less than you think. The numbers overall, how can I explain this? Like, for example, in 83, when John Walsh said that about America being strewn, 67 out of all missing children that year ended up being absolute abductions, gone, taken by strangers. And when we're talking about even then, from then, hundreds of thousands, okay? So those children are very important, and we need to educate about how this can't happen. But there's a lot of damage being done by children. They're not just gone, taken off on some elite's jet or in some truck, you know, driving around the country. They are right there. You're looking at them. You're looking at them. So think about what you're seeing. And, you know, I'm not promoting calling child protective services willy-nilly on people, things like that, because that is hellish if they get involved and there's no reason for it, right? But you need to educate. We all need to educate ourselves on what to look for, and we need to understand what we can do about it, and we need to understand how it's really happening, okay? We need to you need to forget the outrage porn and what you're told, okay? You know, 30-year-old scumbags sitting on their mouldy brown couches, sharing child photos over the cloud-based platform and being busted by Operation MOLTO. What's the difference between them and elites who are abusing? Money. But they're all doing the same thing, and they're loosely networking, but it's not all organised criminal activity, even though that goes on. And